Play to me is any activity that we engage in without an intention or purpose. And that's really, really important because when we're adulting, we try to attach intention and purpose to everything. And play is not play if we're doing it for some reward or for some goal.
Welcome, everybody. Here we are on another episode of the Create, Play, Live podcast. I am Nanette Saylor, your host, and I am thrilled to be here with you today, as always, having another delightful conversation with a wonderful woman who is, as all of us are, using her curiosity to lead, following her heart, and creating an extraordinary life. She is Nakita Pope, and she is a branding strategist. And she has been doing this for a while. She's a professor, actually, of branding and graphic design at the Creative Circus. So my guess is she knows a little bit about creativity. And we're going to have a really fun time having a conversation about what it's like to be in the Creative Circus. She's also a speaker, and she is an author. And I am really happy to welcome her today. Welcome, Nakita. Say hello and tell us, if you will, what are you most excited about creating today?
Wonderful. Thank you for that introduction. That was amazing.
You're welcome.
Hello to your listeners. What I'm most excited about creating today is I'm working on messaging for a client, and I'm really excited about that. You know, just putting words to their brand that they've created. And I'm knee deep in working on my book. So I'm very excited about both of those things.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that. Knee deep in the book. What does that look like?
Well, actually already written. So at this point, I'm actually doing the layout of it. And because I'm a designer, I'm an artist, and I really am excited about like giving a visual look to the book and having that support, all of the content. So that's really exciting for me. I actually limited a little bit as I was writing. I was afraid I would get too caught up in the visuals. So now I get to play.
Very nice. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That, in today's world, I know I've really come to appreciate how the visual aspect of the books that we read is so important in terms of keeping our attention, because we don't. It's just interesting. I was looking at a couple of books just the other day and realizing how much white space there is now in comparison to something. I have a couple of books on my shelf that were published in the 30s and the 40s, and they are full of teeny tiny text, right? In today's world, we see much bigger text. We see lots of white space, and we see lots of interesting other ways that authors are playing, and their designers are playing with the way that the words show up on the page. So is there anything in particular that you're trying to give special attention to make yours unique or different?
Yes, I am a little bit obsessed with color. Color makes me really happy. I think that you can tell an entire story with a color palette. And so, one of mine is to have this book be full color, which is not what you always see these days. And so between that and sort of a combination of illustration and content, so it'll be a little bit of both. I really want it to be an easy read. Like you said, what the layout of books looks like these days is very different because we're dealing with a culture of short attention spans in a lot of ways. So that, to me, it's a very fun and lighthearted sort of way of looking at branding. And I want it to feel that way when you read it. To me, it's part of the brand experience.
Nice. Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple of people. It just happens that this weekend I had lunch with a friend who recently discovered Sark. Do you know Sark, Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy?
I don't.
Oh, you have to look up Sark. She's been around since the let's call it 70s, and all of her work done in full color. And she originally, I was first introduced to her in the mid 80s almost late 80s when my daughter was born. She was very famous for a poster that was sort of handwritten in block print in multiple primary colors, essentially, not primary and a little bit of tone, and poster about how to treat children. And it got very famous. And that look and feel of what we see a lot of now was, she was one of the first that I remember who made that very popularized, this bold print of sort of a hand-designed lettering in multiple colors. And so I think you'd get a big kick out of seeing her work.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, and
I'll have to look that one up.
And all of her books are filled with her doodles and sketches and little exercises of creative discovery. And I think you'll really enjoy it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what colors are you using?
Well, traditionally, the Branding Chicks colors, which is my company, tend to be pretty warm. My target market is mostly women. So, I want to have colors that I feel like will attract women and make them feel comfortable and that have a certain sort of energy to them. So I generally end up with like an eggplant kind of purple, paired with a couple of different shades of pink, like a hot pink, and something a little bit more muted, and sometimes I bring metallics in there. But for the book, I think I want it to have even more energy, so I'm bringing in some electric blues and like coral and things like that, just to make it a little bit more contemporary, but also to keep the feminine sort of quality to it, but add that like go-getter sort of energy. So that I think the balance between them will be good for the content.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. Electric blue. That's a great color. It reminds me of the crayon competitions every year, right? To pick the name of a color. Yeah. Clearly electric blue is very different from eggshell blue, right?
Right.
And if you're trying to demonstrate power and, those kinds of things, then electric blue feels more powerful to me. I don't know. Yeah, that's
fine. Yeah. Completely different personality. Like I believe that colors have personalities, which is why, the idea of the psychology of color is so important when looking at like marketing and advertising and design in a lot of ways as well. So that comes across everywhere, whether we're paying attention to it or not, it comes into play.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, that idea that whether we're paying attention to it or not, it comes into play. So I remember years ago when I first was introduced to the idea of color in interiors, that the walls in an institution, for example, whether they're green or blue or pink or, it's just that horrible, boring brown tan color, that makes a difference in the way that people behave. And I imagine that doing what you do principally as a brand strategist, it's a lot of fun to lead people through the process of getting in touch with what colors are calling them, and then supporting them to decide whether or not those colors are really representing for others what it is they want to represent. Can you tell us a story of a time when somebody really wanted to use a color in their brand that you didn't think was aligned with what they were trying to do?
Yes. That happens all the time.
I figured it right. Yeah.
Let's see. I can think of two examples that really illustrate that point. One is I was working with, or I had contact with a guy several times about his brand, and our contacts were several years apart. So he saw me speak somewhere and we had a conversation. And then he followed up maybe like 2 years later and was like, I've really given this brand some more thought. There were a lot of things you asked me before that I wasn't ready to answer. And I've really done some work around that. I think I know exactly what I want to do now. So his goal was to develop a line of t-shirts for women, and they were like supposed to be really empowering. And, he was going after the professional woman who was like, woman about town, who was very well traveled and well read, intelligent, and just, basically living her best life. But this was supposed to be an empowering line of t-shirts for her. But when he explained things that he wanted on the t-shirts in terms of like what they said and like that kind of thing, he couldn't figure out why the women that were responding to the brand weren't the women initially wanted to attract. And it was simply because he wasn't putting messaging on those shirts that would empower a woman like that. Like, it's empowering to a woman, but just not to the woman that he really wanted to impact. So it was just a little bit off,
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were based on appearance, like sort of touting like, I'm sexy or whatever. And not that the woman he's going after isn't sexy. It's just not the thing that she leads with, right?
Yes.
It's not the thing that she, decides that she wants to wear, on her person. So that's one example. Another is I had a client that was doing lots of spiritual work and healing. And they came looking at sort of refocusing their brand and going in a slightly different direction, but still in the area of healing and therapy in lots of ways. But when I did an assessment of their brand, I realized that one of the biggest like glaring things to me was color palette. The color palette that they were using was like very cold and like almost corporate, like navy blues and grays, and there was a little bit of, which was a little bit warm, but as you said, beige and navy blue together, that says bank, that says corporate entity. It doesn't say that it feels warm or nurturing or healing in any way. So that was one of the first things that I suggested that they do was, you've got to change how you show up. That's a very, like, that triggers people in ways that they don't even know. It automatically doesn't feel warm or inviting. So yeah, those are two examples I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's got to be fascinating to see, because we have so many ways to use visuals in our businesses, right? So many ways. And we all know the statistics about how quickly people make decisions about whether to give something a second look or not, right?
11 seconds.
Yeah. Wow. 11
That's
seconds.
The last number I heard, 11 seconds.
It's not very long.
No, it is not.
Very long. Yeah. And I think, sometimes I think about these podcast interviews, and people have said to me, other people that I know who are doing podcasts are saying, well, I'm trying to keep mine like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 30. And mine, when I have a guest, they, we're here for an hour. That's how it ends up. And and occasionally when I do them on my own, when I don't have a guest, I have done shorter ones. So I figure people can get a little soundbite that way. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but where my head was going is, oh my goodness, what did I do in the first 11 seconds? Right? Yeah. What did I say in the first 11 seconds?
Right.
And it's interesting to circle us back to the book conversation. I was recently listening to Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley talk about when he released his book, Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and that he used some particular techniques in the beginning of the book. He didn't give them away in this conversation I was overhearing, but I have the book, so now I'm going to go back and look. But that he used some particular techniques, both visual and in terms of what content he put in the first few pages. And he talked about that statistically from Kindle, that his book, more people read past the 10th page than is common. as a result. So anyway, I had never heard that as a metric of success in the book writing business before. So I thought, one, that was interesting.
Right.
And then two, that somehow there's a way that you can design the beginning of your book so that it encourages people to go actually flip more than 10 pages. And if you've done that, then you're highly likely to be successful at getting them to continue to be engaged. So I thought that was interesting. And,
it is interesting.
Yeah. And so having, and the other thing that comes to mind for me is obviously because you're in the branding and graphic business, right? This is your love, your passion, and your attention and focus. Now that your books, the words are on the page, you're giving special attention to the look and feel. I know that when I have lots of conversations with other people working on books, the only visual they're really principally concerned with is the cover, right?
Yes.
And so, talk to us, do you do book layout work for clients, or is this something you're just doing for yourself?
I have. It's not really something that I do much of now, but because, I really want to be able to brand particular, projects from beginning to end, and because I have the skills to do it, I'm doing it for myself. But you're right. So many things to consider in terms of, what provides a certain experience for someone. I mean, I think that, now with the idea and get an ebook or do an audiobook, and those have to manage the experience for different reasons,
Yes.
Audiobook, consider theirs totally different than a printed book. But in the age of self-publishing and people being able to publish themselves, like some of those things get sort of taken out of our hands. Like, if it were up to me, this book would be an art piece, but it would also cost $1 million.
Yes.
Like I would, have very specific paper and, metallic inks and, all the things that make something beautiful. And I think I can still make it beautiful. But if I had my choice and money wasn't an issue, then it would have lots more bells and whistles. Because I do think that because there's so many other options to take in a book these days, that I believe that, and I've seen this happen, from a branding standpoint from lots of publishers, is that they're putting more time and attention into like the quality of the printing and the illustration and what the covers look like and the materials. They're putting more effort to encourage people to buy physical books again. So I've seen that shift a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just learned this past weekend that in South Florida, there is a company that has an old school printing press, and they are specializing in making paper, specialty paper, and doing specialty printing. They're actually binding books by hand. And they are carving out this very unique niche for themselves in the specialty book business. And it fascinated me. I wanted to go down and just touch those little keys, those little press key things in the movies. And just imagine what fun that would be to actually roll the paper through like the old newspaper presses and create. Yeah. It's kind of like the people at a couple of the farmers markets and the craft fairs that I attend periodically. I'll occasionally see somebody with an old school typewriter who's writing poems, typing on the old school typewriter. That's really fun too, because you add this whole, not only visual aspect, but a tactile aspect too, right? This whole thing has it's just a whole different experience on lots of sensory levels, as opposed to just receiving the words off the page. So, talk to us a little bit about how did you find your way to being a brand strategist?
I started as a graphic designer. My background is in that, both undergrad and graduate school. And I've always loved the problem-solving part of design. To me, it's never been just to make something look good. It's been, how do you solve a problem visually and also make it as beautiful as it possibly can be. That's always been sort of my approach to design. And so even as I moved, around to different jobs and moved up in the ranks as art director and creative director and things like that, that was always my focus. And the strategy of design has always been like my favorite part. And so, and now, like, our culture is one that they're Fortune 500 companies who are starting to understand that what that's thinking, and understanders aren't always just to kind of add the pretty icing on the cake at the end. That a lot of what we do actually is the cake.
Yes.
So the resurgence of of design thinking and that kind of thing, it's really coming out of people paying attention that we've been doing this all along. And so for me, it's a combination of that sort of design thinking and the strategy behind design. And I've had some experiences with some of the projects and some of the places that I've worked that I got a chance to dive in really deeply on a brand. And I realized that I really love that part of it. It's like a long-term relationship with the brand. Mm-hmm. So whether you create it or not, if you step in at some point during the trajectory of that brand, you build an entire relationship with it. You have to figure out where it's going to go and how do you help get there, and what other people need to be involved and how it needs to look and what it needs to sound like. And so that's sort of expanded my view in terms of what it means to brand. And it's so much involved with it. Like the visual part of it is still only a part of it. There's how do you market it and who really is your audience and what does your messaging need to be and what's your brand voice and, what's your purpose? Like, why are you actually here? Not just to sell me a widget, but like, what do you want to create in the world? Like, what's the core of that? So, all of that is really exciting to me because it gives me a chance to look at the 300,000 view just as much as I look at the 300-foot view. So that part's really fun.
Nice. So what is it that you want to create in the world?
Ooh, I want to create an opportunity for everyone to embrace their brand. I think that one of the things that has been really interesting as I've helped to brand companies and give them a voice, but also help to brand people and give them a voice, and I do workshops and public speak around personal branding and things like that, is that, I tell my audiences and my students all the time, you have a brand regardless of whether you decide to take hold of it and do something with it or not. You have a brand. The goal is to think about, how do you really leverage it or harness it in a way that's going to be the most powerful version of yourself. And so that's a really empowering place to stand from, because I feel like branding yourself or branding a product or a service or a company is, you have to be in a growth mindset to be able to do it well. So if you're looking at how you're going to grow as a person or how you're going to grow your business, you have to think about branding and how you're going to sustain it once it's grown to a certain place. Also, you have to think about it. So to me, I just think that, giving someone a lens to look through, to be able to see how, branding is all around them and how they are a brand is really cool. I think that's part of my purpose. And to teach. I love to teach. I do that in the classroom, and public speaking is an extension of that. It just gave me an opportunity to teach on a larger platform. So that a large part of the extension of what I've learned and what I've experienced and being able to give it away to other people.
Nice. Yeah, I love to teach too. And I had been, for many years, I've been teaching every week, and recently I haven't been doing it. And I realized not too long ago how much I miss the interaction and the energy that comes from the exchange of creative ideas that occur in an environment where you're teaching expression of creative self, whatever that looks like. Because it provides such an opportunity to be introduced to brand new things, right? When people ask questions or they bring we all bring our own experience. As you say, we all carry our personal brand with us. So we bring our experience of our own creative expression, and then we share it in a group. And it's really magical how that all then evolves and kind of morphs and comes into new being. And not having that interface on as regular a basis as I have had in recent history is a void for me. And so I declared to myself this weekend that I was definitely going to find a way to get immersed in that again very quickly, so that I can keep that energy flow going. It's important to me. Yeah, I hear you sharing a similar sensitivity in the world. So that's great. Talk to us about the Creative Circus. I love that name. And I just have this, I have this vision of people walking around in clown suits or something. So
actually, lots of people have the same vision.
And I imagine that's a branding thing, right? So this idea.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fun place to be, right?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Yes.
Yes, and it is. I've been teaching there for 10 years.
Nice.
The Creative Circus is a portfolio school, so we focus on all of the creative side of marketing, advertising. So our programs are copywriting, art direction, graphic design, interactive design, and photography. And, all of our curriculum is built around that. So, we train creatives to go out and do their best work in marketing or advertising, or whether they end up working in-house or they end up building their own brands, which some of them do. It's really an accelerated program. It takes people from 0 to 60 in about 2 years, but very well known in the industry. And it gives them a chance to learn all of the things they need to learn to be able to hit the ground running in a creative career and to build a portfolio that'll get them the positions that they want. So that's what the Creative Circus is. And it's a super fun place.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that idea of birthing and curating a portfolio has got to be really a fun thing to be a part of.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think, it's fun because, especially for as a professor, what I love the most is being able to teach someone at the beginning of their program, have them again or at the end and see like how much they've grown in such a short period of time. So, they end up with these fantastic portfolios, but also, for me, it's so fulfilling to know that I had some small part in that 0 to 60 trajectory for them, because a lot of our students don't have backgrounds in advertising already or marketing already. I've taught doctors, lawyers, Egyptian soldiers.
Oh, goodness.
Literally. So, it's just interesting to see people pursue their dreams and to be able to help them get there.
That's great. That's great. So you're working on your book. What's coming up for me is share with us some of your creative dreams. So outside of business, what would you like to be creating?
Oh man. I think for me, a lot of the things to do are kind of my sweet spot. Like even outside of business, luckily I have the freedom to create curriculum as well. So, that part of it is some of the creation that I'm interested in. I'm a painter as well. Like I'm a very crafty person. I don't get to do as much crafts as I would like. Mm-hmm. But when I get to do something just for me and that it's not tied to a project or a client, I tend to paint. So I'd probably like to do something with that. I'm also a singer, so I'd probably do some more of that. I used to sing backup for bands and be in burlesque shows and things like that. So I haven't done any of that in a while, but I have really, really wonderful car concerts.
Oh, so a little carpool karaoke going on, right?
Oh yeah, in the car, man, I let him have it.
There you go. That's great. Wow. So how long has it been since you've been singing?
Like maybe you said for singing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, about 7 or 8 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, in a formal way, but I sing all the time. I
Yes.
sing all the time, just not necessarily on a stage.
Yeah, I know. I haven't sung on a stage in a long, long time either, or even in, yeah. And long enough that not too long ago, somebody got me to karaoke for the very first time. I had never done it before, and that was scary, very scary. And all considering that all in my growing up years, I was a performer. It shouldn't have been scary at all. But then I realized, of course, well, come on, Nanette, that was more than 30 years ago. So no surprise.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while. So, and like you, I love to sing in the car. Singing in the car is great. And, and it doesn't really push me outside of my comfort zone, does it? Right. So,
right.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to have
absolutely.
I'm going to have to flex that muscle. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like to look at them as practices.
Yes.
So that when I do it in front of other people, I'll be ready.
There you go. There you go. Well, we'll have to commit to challenging each other at some point in the future. We'll let you get past your book project first, but we'll have to have we'll have to have a little vocal challenge. Not necessarily. I'm not a fan of the Facebook Live challenge things in the world, but just privately to say, hey, we're going to go out and sing somewhere at some point with somebody. Yeah, and
that would be fun.
And see what happens. That would be fun. Yeah,
singing has always been interesting for me because it's something that I really love to do. But even when I was younger, I struggled with stage fright a lot, and so there were times where, like, definitive moments in my life where I purposefully pushed myself to do the thing that was going to be the most scary in that realm. And so, I think that's a part of the reason why I've been able to, sort of get past some of that. It still shows up when it comes to singing, though, but I'll stand up in front of a room anytime. It's really interesting, but, just that, like, that part of it, I think it's been so much a part of my creative process. I don't sing every day, where I'm not on the stage every day. It definitely has fed into, like, who I am as a creative, professional, so it all comes back around.
Yes. That's great. Yeah. So speaking is an interesting stage, isn't it? This, and particularly, I was enjoying hearing you talk about how much you love teaching, and that when you stand on stage, when you speak to groups, that it gives you the opportunity to teach a larger audience. And I think that that's really a wonderful thing. And so share with us who are the people that you love most to get in front of as a speaker?
I would say there's probably a few different groups. Because my target market has mostly been women, like women entrepreneurs, I love to speak to them. I feel like, they have a similar approach to business that I do, overarchingly. And so they respond to my style of speaking, which is, like I said, very much, focused on teaching. And I want it to be fun. I want it to be, given the information to be delivered to them in a way that they can respond to and that they can see themselves inside of. So, just like not this like lofty kind of I'm the expert, listen to me talk kind of thing, but like, let's have a conversation about this and let's put in some terms that, you can map onto something else that you understand so that it starts to connect the dots for you. So that's one. I do a lot of mentoring and like career days and things like that. I've done some college speaking as well. And that's also really fun because, I'm sure often kids are not necessarily encouraged to pursue a career that is creative, a starving artist kind of thing.
Yes.
And I'm blessed in the sense that I always had the support from my parents. They didn't really understand what I was doing. They're like, is that going to make you happy? Well, then do it,
Yes.
And I know that not many kids are in that space. And then there's a whole world of, even like opening up their sphere so that they can see that there's possibilities there. And so that's super interesting for me, because I know that being able to tell them what I do and how I got there, what my training was, like completely opens it up for them. They just never considered that these doodles that they do in their notebooks, or the fact that they're always wanting to draw something or make something or whatever, can be the way they sustain themselves and make money. Yeah. So that just being able to expose them to that is also really, really fulfilling for me, because I did a lot of that research on my own, and I had people who were supporting that all along the way. Like, I had teachers in middle school and high school that said, really good at this, you can, make something out of this. And I know that not every kid is afforded that opportunity. Yeah. And if I can get to one that starts to look at things differently, then that makes a difference for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are so lucky to have you out there influencing the young people of the world. Seriously, because you're absolutely right. So many people don't imagine that a creative career is one that can be financially rewarding. And, so many of us, my trajectory was such, mine wasn't so much that I was afraid I couldn't make a living. My detour was very specifically because I didn't want to compete. I understood it to be I grew up in and around New York and Manhattan, and the creative environment there was intense. And I didn't want to compete. So I concluded, and being a product of the late 70s, early 80s, that was the, women go to business idea was just sort of coming of age at that time. So it was a natural thing for me to transition into something that was business related. And I ended up as a hotel manager, which interestingly enough, I didn't realize it at the time. But when I went back to my 20-year reunion a number of years ago, the hotel school was promoting themselves as a creative career. And I had no idea. Wow. And of course, now as a student of all things creative and as a creativity coach, really understanding how creatives think, it's so obvious to me that hotel managers have to be creative thinkers, because it's such a constantly changing environment. And there are all these things that we manage that it's not never a status quo environment. So just glaring now that absolutely that was a creative career choice. But then, of course, I was interpreting it as a business career choice, not a creative one, right? So, right. One other thought about that, last year when I was at the Florida Creativity Conference that happens in March every year over in Sarasota, we have the conference the last couple of years. It's been on the campus of one of the University of South Florida campuses, and in conjunction with another program that has a big focus on creative careers. And one of I think it was the director of that program who came and spoke to our group, and he said that one of his biggest challenges is speaking with the parents and having to convince them that this is a reasonable choice for their child. And he showed us a slide presentation where he went through like 7 slides really quickly that were totally filled of the list of all the potential creative careers. And he said, I do this on purpose this way with the parents so that I get their attention and say, look, you think there's nothing your child is going to be able to do in the world that are creative careers? Here, let's take a look. Click, 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 click. And the list, it was so perfect because it really spoke to that analytical mind thing that parents are doing and saying, oh, starving artist or something else. And here this person had come up with a way to really tap into that and show parents in a way that they could understand that there are lots and lots of other choices. So I thought that was super cool. And again, I think we should all be grateful that there are people like you in the world who are working with young people and helping them to make those choices, because we know that you can teach a computer a lot of things, but you can't teach a computer to have the creative awareness that brings a brand to life, right? That it just doesn't happen, or that the design thinking that solves a problem with a design solution that now is ideal for the new age, whatever that looks like. And I think it's an interesting place to be a part of the conversation, right? Around creativity and how important it is. And this idea that we all have that little spark somewhere. As many of us, it doesn't get supported. And so for there to be people like you out in the world inviting people who are interested to their creative circus, I think that's just super cool. Super cool. Let's talk for a minute about inspiration. Obviously, when you're working on brands, when you're working on design ideas, when you're painting, when you're singing, we as creatives, we seek inspiration in a variety of ways. What kinds of things do you do to fill your well? Where do you get your inspiration from?
I know this is going to sound a bit cliche, but everywhere, like it's all around me. But, more specifically, I think that I'm inspired by conversation. I love meeting new people and talking to new people because everyone is doing something different. Everyone has a different perspective. So talking to them about, what's going on in the world and culture and their families, and like it just gives me so many different perspectives to sort of put all in my brain that I can pull out whenever I need to for certain things. So that's one. I'm continually inspired by my students. And I tell them all the time that they teach me just as much as I teach them, which is absolutely true.
Absolutely. That's been my truth for sure.
Yes. And it's, it reignites me. It reminds me of why I love to do the work I do sometimes. So that's a big part of it. I'm a big fan of music, all types of music. So that's inspiring to me. Like I usually have stuff playing when I'm working or in my car if I'm not listening to an audiobook. And because I listen to so many different types of music, like even if I just let my playlist go, there's no telling what might come up. And so, I think that, music is so interesting because it's into where you are right now. Like the song might not have changed, but your perspective on the song might change based on where you are in life or what's going on in your life right now you are, or, what the day might have been like. Like there's so many different interpretations. So even if I could listen to the same song every day, I swear I would see or hear something different in it. So music is a big one. Visually, I love to go to museums. I like to be outside in nature. I feel like God is the best designer of them all.
Yeah.
So when I see really unusual things in nature, I'm like, man, look at that color. Like, that's not a man-made color. I thought it was. It's not,
Yes.
Or just, the wings on a butterfly or, landscapes and when I can't get to those things, I enjoy just like losing myself in Pinterest. There's just so many interesting things on Pinterest. And because it's so visual, it gives me what I need like almost immediately. So even if I told you I'm obsessed with color. So even if I just do a search for color palettes on Pinterest, the amount of things that come up are really, really amazing. So I have lots of tools that just kind of like, I call it like, passive inspiration versus active inspiration. So, Pinterest tends to be an active one. Like, I need inspiration for this project, like right now, because I need to work on this. So I'll go there. And a lot of the other things that happen are very passive. Like, I'm listening to music because I love it, but there's something in it that inspires me. Or I go for a walk because I just want to go for a walk, but I see something along the way that happens to inspire me. So I think, sometimes it's passive, sometimes it's active, but either way, it ends up kind of always being there in some shape or form.
I love that distinction. Thank you for sharing that. The active versus passive inspiration. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and yeah, Pinterest is something else.
You're a fan.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's kind of a guilty pleasure, and obviously, can be really powerful when you need something now. Working on a workshop, I need some ideas for things to make out of repurposed materials. My goodness, the list is endless on Pinterest for sure. So I appreciate that. And thank you for that reminder. So, and I'm a big fan of music, and it's so powerful for me, for its ability to lift me up. When I'm in that place of, wow, this isn't going exactly the way I thought it was going to go. And I'm maybe having a little trouble getting to that completion place because it just is feeling harder than it should, all that stuff. Finding the right song can really make a difference. Mm-hmm. The other thing I know is that when I'm writing music, certain rhythms of music, I'm a big fan of the Game of Thrones themes, Braveheart themes for writing. If I'm in the groove, if I'm to keep me going with the rhythm of do this, gonna get it done, I'm gonna get there, right? And as opposed to the introspective journaling thing, right? That's a totally different kind of music. But
I get that.
So I know, you said you listen to lots of different music. Was there something you heard today that caught your attention?
I actually haven't listened to anything today. I've been on calls all morning.
Okay.
So I haven't listened to anything today. But yesterday, what did I listen to? Carrie Underwood's Last Name. I love that song. I don't know if you know it. You know that one?
I've probably heard it, but I don't know it by name. So I'm going to have to go.
The premise of the song, and my mom loves country music. And when I was little, I didn't understand it. And I'm like, why do you like country music? And she's like, well, it tells a story. It always has a good story. And she's so right. And so now I find myself being like, if I do like any country music, I get attracted to what the story is about. And so this story is about her going to hang out in Vegas with her friends and all this kind of stuff. And she gets a little bit too drunk and she meets this guy and apparently marries him and wakes up the next morning and realizes that she got married in her drunken stupor and doesn't even know her last name. That's why the song is called Last Name. So, but it has this really funky rhythm and a really funky beat. And it's just got on top of it, and her voice is amazing. So every time I hear it, it just kind of gets me going a little bit. Great. So it's the
great.
One that stuck out.
I love that you shared your attraction to country music is about the story, right? And that your mom had this experience of, they're always interesting. There's always interesting stories. It's reminding me of one of our previous podcast guests, Shirley Ann, who admitted to being a fan of the Hallmark Channel because there's these, silly, sappy stories, but they always are a really nice story. And in the end, they always, kiss and make up, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And somehow
I already know that this guy happy.
yeah, everybody, my sense is that we all need to be lifted up in some way with kind of these
Oh, yeah.
simple, silly stories. And it's nice that we can have that, right? That we can have that. So thank you for reminding me of that, and for bringing us all and bringing all the listeners to that reminder too, because I think sometimes I know I'm guilty of taking myself too serious and taking the world too seriously a lot of the time. So it's nice to be able to get a little silly and just enjoy.
No, we all can. We all can. Yeah. And it's important to get that perspective. And like you said, having a story that is going to end well, gives you a certain level of inspiration, but also like security, there's enough things that are probably not going to go well, and we can see it crashing and burning in the world. Yeah. So knowing that you're watching something, even if it doesn't look good in the moment, know that it's going to end up well is kind of, it's kind of a good little security blanket when you need it,
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I totally agree. Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up here, so I know you've got to be really excited about your book launch. So I understand that we're just a little premature to letting that cat out of the bags yet. So we'll kind of hold on to that for another conversation potentially, or for just letting our listeners know over on the website at createplaylive.com. In the meantime, tell us how everyone can get in touch with you if they want to follow along with what you're up to in the world. Yeah, where's the best place for them to find you? Where do you play?
I play all over. You can check out my website at brandingchicks.com. I'm also on Twitter at Branding Chicks, and on Instagram it's Real Branding Chicks. So any of those places you can find me.
Excellent. So which of those do you prefer? Do you have a sense of which of the social media platforms are the most fun for you?
Right now it's a combination of Facebook and Twitter. Facebook and Instagram, sorry. I do have some conversations on Twitter, but I find that more people reach out to me individually on Facebook or on Instagram. So it's been fun to connect with people that way. I'm in lots of Facebook groups and things like that. So just a getting contact with people. I really like any of them, honestly.
Yeah. Are there any Facebook groups for creatives that you could recommend that you'd encourage people to look up?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Let me see if I can remember the names of them. One of them is African American Designers, which is very inspiring in lots of ways. And then there's another one. It's actually connected to a service. So Dubsado, Dubsado, is actually a CRM and project management service, and it's geared towards creatives, but they have a community that goes along with the software, so you can be a part of the community even if you're not on the platform yet. I plan on joining the platform. I just haven't fully fleshed out my platform yet, but I've been a part of this. I was trying to get a good feel for the service itself, and it's just been really great because there's so many creatives in there. People come and talk about, what's going on with like how to manage their projects and things with the Dubsado, but they're asking questions about their creative businesses and, how do they manage clients, or I have this really odd situation and I'm not really sure what to do. What would you guys suggest? Or have you ever been in this? So I really respond to, some of those just because almost everyone, all of us have gone through the same types of things. Yeah. And even if you haven't gotten there yet, you will eventually. So I feel like it's just really cool to have a safe space to ask those questions without judgment and have a group of people that knows exactly how you feel and is willing to help. So I really respond to really respond to ones like that. And this isn't really a Facebook group, but creativemornings.com. It's Creative Mornings.
Yes, I do. It's great. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah. It keeps you in the creative conversation in so many different ways. And we have a pretty big chapter here in Atlanta. Love going to but I find that even just going and listening to talks in the background while I'm working and things like that have been really inspirational for me, because it features globally, they feature so many different types of creatives. And so that's really, kind of breaks open even what it means to be creative. There are social entrepreneurs and chefs and jewelry designers and people may not even necessarily would have put into the creative, bucket. But when you hear what they do and you look through that lens, you can absolutely see how creative they must be. So that's another place that I really like to go and just kind of click around and look for some inspiration and have some fun.
That's great. Well, these are super, super resources. Thank you. We'll be sure to post all of those with links in the show notes so everybody will have a chance to check them out. And I thank you very much for adding those to our list, because we have a now growing list of super cool ways for creatives to get inspired and share with others and stay connected. And that's really my intention for these conversations, is to encourage everyone to reflect a little bit on where they are in their creative journey, and then to use these tools and sparks, if you will, to jump off to do new things and to see where it leads. Because at the end of the day, we are as creatives all in the business of asking the question, what else is possible, right? And allowing ourselves to just continue to push that limit further and further and further out. And so we'll see where it takes us. Anything else you want to add before we close, my friend?
I think that's it. But I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. And I enjoyed it as well. And I know our listeners will too. Look forward to hearing from everyone. We're getting such great feedback from people who have found their way to listening to us here at the Create, Play, Live podcast. And I am excited to keep this ball rolling. Every 2 weeks, we release another episode, and the community continues to grow and grow. So thank you, Nakita Pope, for joining me today and for sharing a little bit of your wisdom and inspiration and your creative expertise. I know that people will be looking to have some conversations with you about branding and all of that. So yeah. Yeah. And we will stay connected. So, and as I've shared with all of my guests, I am certain we will circle back around at some point in the future, and we'll have an opportunity to update and talk again, because I imagine that this is going to keep going for quite some time. So look forward to celebrating your book launch when it comes out. And until then, we will say goodbye for today. I will sign us out and say thank you to Nakita Pope, my guest, and goodbye to all of our listeners. And we will see you again at createPlayLive.com. This is Nanette Saylor saying goodbye for now. Until we see you next time, stay curious, my friends. You are listening to the Create, Play, Live show, where women come together to share how curiosity and creativity lead them to extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Nanette Saylor, and I'm honored to share the mic with some truly amazing women who have asked and answered the question, what if we stop adulting and live every day with the curiosity of a child at play? And these enlightening conversations will invite you to let go of outdated standards, make your own rules, and give yourself permission to play more than ever before. You have the power to create your life. Spend some time with us and you'll learn to see life through new eyes and challenge yourself to new possibilities. We may not solve the world's problems, but we will get you to think differently about your own. Come play with us. Listen and subscribe at createplaylive.com.